In the desert. The Israelites now began a long journey into the wilderness of Shur, a frightful place that extended for hundreds of miles without a single well or shade tree. Its only inhabitants were snakes and scorpions. These creatures were so venomous that if one crawled across the shadow of a bird flying overhead, the bird would die instantly. The Israelites struggled across the desert. Soon their pots, their jugs, and their goatskin water bags were all empty. Sheep and cattle dropped in their tracks. Children cried for water, but there was none to give them. Moses pleaded with the people not to lose hope. Scouts reported an oasis ahead. The Israelites arrived, only to find that the water in its wells was so bitter that they could not drink it. They named the oasis Marah, which means bitterness. The people cried to Moses in desperation and fear, "Did you bring us out of Egypt so that we could die here of thirst? Give us water." But Moses had no water to give them. Moses prayed to Yahweh to show him what to do. Yahweh answered his prayer. He showed Moses a laurel tree. The laurel's sap was bitter, but after Moses took a branch from the tree, scratched the name of Yahweh on its bark, and threw it into one of the wells, the foul water became sweet. The Israelites quenched their thirst and praised Yahweh, who had rescued them once more. They continued across the desert to the oasis at Elim. Here they found 12 wells, one for each of the 12 tribes. 70 palm trees provided shade, one for each of the elders of Israel. They rested at Elim, filled their skins and water jars, then marched on across the wilderness of Sin. Food grew scarce. The Israelites had consumed everything they brought from Egypt. They began to feel pangs of hunger. "Better that we had died in Egypt," they cried to Moses and Aaron. "Back there we had meat in our stew pots and as much bread as we could swallow." Hunger and distress had caused them to forget the miseries of slavery. The Egyptians had never given them enough to eat. In Egypt, the flour for their bread was mixed with sand and pebbles. Their only meat came from grasshoppers and locusts that the children caught, for the Egyptians would not even allow them to fish in the Nile. Moses prayed to Yahweh for guidance. Yahweh answered, saying, "I have heard my people grumbling. Tell them that they will eat meat this afternoon, and tomorrow morning they will have bread, as much as they can hold. Then they will know that I am truly God." That evening, just before the sun set, a flock of quail flew into the camp. The Israelites caught the birds easily. There were more than enough for all to eat their fill. The next morning they awoke to find that dew had fallen around the camp in the night. The dew evaporated, leaving behind a strange, thin, golden crust. It looked like wafers of frost. "What is this?" the Israelites asked Moses. "It is manna, the food of the angels," he told them. "This is the food that Yahweh has provided for you, according to his promise. Gather as much as you require for your daily needs. Remember, on the 6th day you must gather enough for 2 days, for manna will not fall on the Sabbath." Manna was a miraculous food. Some gathered more, some gathered less, but every person had as much to eat as he or she required. No one went hungry. Manna required no preparation. It did not have to be peeled or cleaned, baked or cooked. It could be eaten as it was, right from the ground. Manna had no taste, and yet it had every taste. If a person desired a certain food, the manna would taste just like it. Small children said it tasted like milk. Young men and women thought it had the taste of bread and meat. For old, toothless people, it had the taste of honey, and for the sick it tasted like barley mixed with honey and oil. However, there were limits to manna. It had to be gathered in the early morning, for after the sun came up it melted away like dew. It could not be stored or put away. Anyone who tried to hide an extra portion found it stinking and crawling with worms. Only manna set aside for the Sabbath could be preserved, and then it was preserved perfectly. Flies and insects did not crawl on it. Mice would not nibble it. It remained as fresh as when it was gathered. In this way, Yahweh watched over the Israelites in the desert. He gave them food. He protected them against their enemies. Yet they did not cease to complain. As former slaves, they were used to their masters providing everything. They had no faith in themselves. When faced with difficulty, they became frightened and angry. Then they turned on Moses. The fierce desert sun burned down. Heat dried up the wells. People fell to the ground, dying of thirst. Instead of seeking new springs, the Israelites hurried to Moses. "Give us water," they demanded. "I have no water," Moses told them. The people cursed Moses and pelted him with stones. "Is this why you brought us out of Egypt, so we could die of thirst in the desert?" "Why do you cry to me?" Moses shouted above the uproar. "Pray to Yahweh. He is the one who provides water." The Israelites would not be satisfied. They threatened Moses, demanding that he give them water at once. Moses appealed to Yahweh for help. "What am I to do with these people? They are terrified they are going to die of thirst. They beg me for water, but I have none to give them. They are at the end of their patience. If I don't give them water, they will stone me." A pile of rocks lay close to the camp. Yahweh instructed Moses to lead the people to the rocks. When they gathered there, Moses had the people choose a rock. Moses tapped it with his staff, and water gushed forth. People and animals drank until they quenched their thirst. As Yahweh provided food, he also provided water. A miraculous well appeared. The Israel called it Miriam's well, in honor of Moses' sister. Miriam's well was a beautiful fountain, shooting streams of water high into the air. It never ran dry. Miriam's well accompanied the children of Israel throughout their journey across the desert. When they marched, it moved with them. When they camped, it rested close by. The miraculous well never left their side until they finally entered the land of Canaan. Soon after this, the Israelites encamped at a place called Rephidim. Suddenly, they were attacked by a fierce tribe of desert nomads called the Amalekites. The attack came so swiftly that the people of Israel would have been annihilated had Yahweh not covered them with a cloud. The Amalekites could not penetrate the cloud or pierce it with spears or arrows. They camped around it, knowing the Israelites would have to emerge sooner or later. The people of Israel asked Moses to lead them into battle. He refused, not because he was afraid, but because an old man like himself would be of better use praying for victory than wielding a sword. He appointed a fearless warrior, Joshua, son of Nun, to command the forces of Israel. Joshua selected the bravest men from among the Israelites and led them out of the cloud to fight the Amalekites. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Hur, Miriam's husband, climbed to the top of a nearby hill to watch the battle. When Moses raised his arms, the Amalekites retreated. However, soon his arms grew tired. He had to lower them. Then the Israelites retreated. Back and forth the battle went, until Moses grew so weary he could hardly hold up his arms at all. Aaron and Hur sat Moses down upon a stone. Standing on either side of him, they lifted his arms and held them up until sunset, when Joshua finally overcame the last of the Amalekites. Moses took the stone on which he sat and erected an altar to Yahweh to give thanks for the victory. He called the place Adonai Nisi, meaning God is my banner.